Hi everyone, my name is Jason Freeberg. I'm a product manager here at Snowflake, and we have a quick update for our Java and Scala developers that I'm really excited to share with everyone. And as you can guess from my screen that I'm sharing here, it's our new Maven and Gradle plugins that we currently have in Snowflake Labs. So these plugins will allow you to more easily deploy your stored procedure and UDF objects. So using these plugins in your pom.xml or your build.gradle file, you can specify your object's name, handler, and other metadata. And then when you run the deployment command, you can deploy your objects right from the terminal. And then under the hood, these plugins will create a stage if it doesn't already exist, and then upload your compiled jar and all of your dependencies to that stage. And then finally, it will run the DDL that's specified in the plugin to create those objects on Snowflake. And then you can also use environment variable injection in these plugins. So that way you can specify different target environments. Like if you have a dev account and a prod account, you can just change the environment variable without having to change your code. Or if you're using these in a CI pipeline like GitHub Actions, then you can use those environment variables to keep your secrets outside of your source code and outside of source control. So here you can see the source code. It's on Snowflake Labs. And then if we pop over to Maven Central, you can see that the Snowflake Maven plugin has been published. The Gradle plugin has not yet been published, but there are instructions down here to do local installations. And then you can also look at using the community Gradle plugin provided by Stuart Bryson here. And let's go ahead and hop over to VS Code and see a quick demo of the Maven plugin. So here I have a sample repository set up, a sample project for Snowpark. So I have a stored procedure right here that creates a little 2x2 hello world data frame and then just returns that data frame. And then I have a sample UDF that just combines two strings. And let's go ahead and just see how this works. So right here, I'm using the run command in VS Code just to run the stored procedure. And then in the stored proc here on line 29, we are registering that combined strings UDF, and then we're using that in the sample data frame operations right here. And then perfect, right down on the bottom, you can see here's the little hello world data frame that's returned. So now I'm able to run this locally, like we just saw, and now I can use the Maven plugin to deploy this onto my Snowflake account. So here in my pom.xml, I have the Snowpark dependency, obviously, in JUnit for my tests. And now here I also have a new plugin, so com.snowflake and Snowflake Maven plugin. And then there's a few configuration objects here. The first one is my authentication information. So I have my URL, my username, my password, my database, and my schema. And then here you can see that I'm using the environment variable injection that I was talking about earlier. So that way I don't have to put my username and password in my source code and in Git. I can keep that out of source control. And then I also have the stage specified that I want to use. And then here we can see that there's an entry for functions, meaning user-defined functions. And I only have the one that we saw earlier, combined strings. And then here I'm pointing to the handler that we saw earlier. And I'm specifying my arguments, names, and types. And then finally down here, the return type. And then similarly, right here, I have an entry for procedures, meaning stored procedures. And I can specify the name, handler. In my example, I don't have any arguments. And then my stored procedure returns a table with one string column. So with all of this specified in the POM, I can come back to the terminal here, clear this output, and I can do Maven clean package. And so, of course, that will clean my target directory and then recompile my app and run my tests. And now what I'll do here is add Snowflake : deploy. So we'll run this, that's going to clean the target directory. We can see here my test cases are running. So I have a simple test case for the UDF and for the stored proc. And the test succeeded successfully there. And now what's happening here, let me close this, make some space, perfect. So we can see here in the terminal, this is the Maven plugin running right now. So it's creating the stage, and now it's uploading my source jar, and then it's also uploading all of my dependency jars. So I have a few dependencies that I'm importing here, and then it's uploading that to the stage. And then finally, it's going to run the create or replace statements here for the UDF. So you can see here, it returns the string, language Java, pointing to my handler in my source code. And then here are my import statements. So it's importing all of my dependencies from that stage. And then here for my stored procedure, it's the same story, doing the create or replace, the return type, and then all of my imports. And then everything was built successfully. So here I can pop over to my Snowflake account. And here on line 2, I'm running this utility method getDDL, and this returns the DDL that was used to create that procedure object, hello world proc. And we can see here it matches up with what I saw in the terminal. So we have create or replace, hello world proc, returns my table, language Java, and all of my import statements are there. And then it's the same story for the UDF right here. And so finally, I can run my stored procedure here on Snowflake. So perfect, there we go. I was able to run the stored procedure on Snowflake. Let's do a quick recap. I had on VS Code on my local laptop right here, I have a stored procedure and a UDF. And then in the terminal, I ran this simple command, Maven clean package snowflake deploy, that recompiled my project, ran my tests, and then took my compiled jar and deployed that onto Snowflake with all of my dependencies using the configuration in the plugin. And then finally ran the create statements to actually create those objects in the account. Now, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that you can also use this from a CI pipeline like GitHub Actions. So let's see that scenario next. Over here in the last tab, I have a GitHub Actions workflow in my project, and it's pretty simple. It's just one job, and it gets executed whenever there's a push on the main branch or when a release is created. And then down here, it just checks out the repository contents, sets up Java 11, builds and tests my project, and then finally deploys my project to Snowflake. And then finally here in this last step, I'm uploading my compiled jar to the GitHub artifact registry just for future reference in case I need to go back and see what is in my source code. So let's just hop over to the README, and we'll make a little dummy commit here. Or actually, let's do this. We'll come over to my stored procedure, and we'll add a little change in the table that's returned from the stored procedure. And now let's push this up to the main branch. So I'm going to commit this to main and push it to main. And then that will trigger the build and deploy workflow here. So if I pop back over to GitHub, we can come to the Actions tab, and the workflow has already started. And a quick note, so you can see here, I'm referencing a few environments, a few environment variables here. So that way I don't need to put all of my sensitive information about my account and all of my auth information in my source code. I can keep that separate and safe in the form of GitHub Actions secrets. So before this demo, I went into my repository settings and then created all of those. Oh, and actually it looks like this failed here because the test case wasn't updated. So I'm going to come back to my test case, procedure app test, and it looks like this needs the same smiley face there. So that just goes to show that your tests are very valuable. So let's try that again. So I'll commit this to main, push it, and then let's see if that fixes the test failure. Okay, great. So it looks like the test case was fixed and everything ran successfully. So if we come in here, it's the same steps that we saw in the workflow file. And then if we open up the deploy step here, it's everything we saw before. So it's copying all of the dependencies. And down here, let's see. Perfect. So create or replace the function, and then here create or replace that stored procedure. So then if we come back to the Maven demo, I should be able to just run this again, and then we should see that the output has changed to have that smiley face because we made that change, ran it through CI, and then deployed it onto the same account that we deployed to from VS Code. And perfect, there we go. It's got the smiley face. So that was the demo. If you want to give this a try, you can go to the Snowflake Labs repository here, and this has the installation instructions for Maven and Gradle. And beyond that, if you want to file an issue, if you run into a problem or have feedback, feel free to do that right on the repository here. You can also upvote and comment on the issues that are already on here. And if you have a question or a comment, you can tag me in those as well. My username on GitHub is right here, so feel free to @ me. And let's see, beyond that, happy hacking. Thanks for watching.